2004, a 2-meter statue of the Nataraja was unveiled at CERN, the European Centre for Research in Particle Physics in Geneva, Switzerland. It was gifted by the Indian government. Next to it is a plaque which contains the following explanation for its metaphor by renowned physicist Fritjof Capra. Hundreds of years ago, Indian artists created visual images of dancing Shivas in a beautiful series of bronzes. In our time, physicists have used the most advanced technology to portray the patterns of the cosmic dance. The metaphor of the cosmic dance thus unifies ancient mythology, religious art, and modern physics. This is the Nataraja, or the Dancing Shiva as it came to be known amongst popular Western intellectuals and storytellers during the early parts of the 20th century. It is widely considered to be the epitome of what Hindu iconography has to offer. The main reason for this fascination among Western intellectuals is probably the stark difference between the semiotics of its Indian symbology juxtaposed with the Western counterparts from ancient times. But why? Why were elements of Hindu symbology and iconography like the dancing Shiva able to arrest the Western eye with such intensity? Here's our theory. While both Western and Eastern religious spiritual traditions view the existential crisis of the human condition as a punishment of sorts, the Western idea of liberation has been largely influenced by the Judeo-Christian tradition. Atonement through repentance is a moral obligation for every believer, with the fall of man attributed to everyone. As was the burden of setting things right, heaven and hell are then destinations decided for ones who succeeded and failed in this mission. One has to live one's life in a way that would constitute a smoother transition to heaven at the time of one's judgment. And Judgment Day comes to us all in many ways. All of this means that the Western worldview stresses on a linear causality. The Eastern idea of liberation, however, centers around the games of karma being a zero-sum one at the time of one's death. And whatever be the results of the moral ledger weighed in at the end, one must enter the eternal cycle of samsara where life and death, creation and destruction, all of it, is the only certainty. The dharmic concept of mukti or liberation then is hinged on how one can identify this truth during one's hard existence. Whether one chooses the yoga of jnana, bhakti or karma, the ultimate ideal of one's existence is achieving moksha, the permanent mukti or liberation from the samsaric cycle. All of this means that the Indian worldview is fashioned by cyclical causality. While this basic difference trickled into the arts, politics, and social cultures at large, its effect on the visual arts of the Eastern and Western hemispheres has been just as stark as it has been subtle. Their language of symbolic communication in the Western world hinged on eliciting sentimentality through the ancient religious works. Each artwork was never really complete in itself. Linear causality dictated that each piece of art reprised individual scenes evoking the nature of the subject's suffering, inviting the beholder to partake in its torment. For example, the crucifixion, along with the larger biblical canvas, is testament to this fact. The Hindu tradition and its symbolism was inspired by the dharmic cyclical worldview. There was no destination, only an eternal cycle that one needed to escape. Nietzsche himself was inspired by this philosophical outlook, which was instrumental in his doctrine of Übermensch and the eternal recurrence. Such a worldview dictates a sense of totality and absolutism that must be communicated in all artworks pertaining to ancient religious and spiritual thought. For example, one need not look further than the concept of mandalas prevalent in Hindu, Jain, and Buddhist spiritual traditions. This inherent completeness of an artwork as a religious spiritual symbol is what hooked Western intellectuals. Understanding this weight of Hindu symbology, let us then have a look at the image of the Nataraja, the dancing Shiva. The two basic forms of Shiva's dance, one, the gentler version called Lasya, and the other, the more energetic Tandav, fuse together effortlessly in the Nataraja. The Lasya aspect is graceful and full of happiness. It is associated with the feminine energy of creation. In fact, it is widely associated with the dance performed by goddess Parvati in response to Shiva's Tandava, which is associated with obliteration. The Nataraja then encompasses the total significance of the samsara with its dual aspects of feminine creation and male destruction. The arc of flames or the Prabha Mandala only reinforces the notion of the cyclical prison of our Atman or soul. This circular halo, pockmarked with fire at its periphery, symbolizes the containment of the self or the Atman in the material world. The subtle smile on the dancing Shiva's face indicates the ultimate tranquility of the Atman in the face of the samsaric illusion necessary for mukti. The Damru in the right hand signifies the drum of creation. Agni in the left hand symbolizes destruction. The limbs are bent at multiple joints, signifying constant movement, which is the relentless nature of samsaric chakra or the wheel of existence. Nataraja's hair is wild and all over the place, indicating the ferocity of his dance energy. On his head are adorned the following: a human skull, which is a symbol of mortality, a crescent moon denoting the waxing and waning of the moon as a representation of the perpetual motion of time, and a Hindu datura flower also called the Indian thorn apple. It is a known entheogen with powerful psychoactive substances. This further reinforces the notions of our worldly existence as a hallucination or merely an illusion, that is, Maya. The Nataraja dance itself is an expression of wrath against the dwarf demon Apasmara. Now, Apasmara's significance has often been described as a representation of the ego or ignorance. But its etymology is curious. Apa signifies negation, whereas smara literally alludes to anything pertaining to memory and recollection. So, Apasmara could come to signify the negation or annihilation of memory itself. But why? What could be its significance? You see, in the first season of the hit show True Detective, Rust Cole declares human consciousness to be the greatest anomaly in evolution. But Nietzsche had already gone further by denouncing memory as a chief culprit. Because memory aids the ego in formulating a selfish persona with temporal consistency. This means it helps sustain an illusion through space and time. Our memory erases from our psyches the nature of our true selves as the Atman or even the Parabrahman. Clinging to a selfish persona or identity, brainwashed with its memory in the face of one's true reality, only accentuates one's suffering. Nataraja, as a symbol, signifies the destruction of this illusion and that of active memory in a semiotic return to a divine absolution. Yes, this can be considered Vedantic. The message is thus truly comprehensive. The dance around the fiery halo of the Prabha Mandala signifies action and an impermanence, yet it's a symbol complete in itself. The paradox of something impermanent being permanent is brilliantly translated to a singular symbol. That is why the Nataraja is a perfect symbol. In his seminal book Island, Aldous Huxley, the author of works like Brave New World and The Perennial Philosophy, composed an ode of his own to commemorate the perfect symbol of the Nataraja. O you the creator, you the destroyer, you who sustain and make an end, who in sunlight dance among the birds and the children at their play, who at midnight dance among the corpses in the burning grounds. You Shiva, you dark and terrible Bhairava, you suchness and illusion, the void and all things. You are the Lord of life, and therefore I have brought you flowers. You are the Lord of death, and therefore I have brought you my heart. This heart that is now your burning ground. Ignorance there and self shall be consumed by with fire. That you may dance, Bhairava, among the ashes. That you may dance, Lord Shiva, in a place of flowers. And I dance with you.